Welcome to the Connor's Corner segment of Ask the Lawyer. Right now, I'm very proud to have one of the great heroes of freedom of speech in the world today, Garry Kasparov, who's got a book coming out, Winter is Coming. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm fine. It's a very good day.
So what is Winter is Coming about?
Winter is Coming has three stories in one. It's a story of rise and fall of Russian democracy, from Gorbachev's retreat from Eastern Europe to Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Of course, it's my personal perspective as a witness and in many cases a participant of many of these events. It's about the Western inaction, what the West could and didn't do to prevent these unfortunate events from happening.
We go back some years ago, and George Bush said he looked into the eyes of Vladimir Putin and he saw his soul and everything was okay.
Look, I would rather see George W. Bush looking at Putin's KGB records instead of looking in his eyes, because Putin's record as a KGB man was very clear. He made quite a few statements before he met George W. in June 2001 that could help to understand his true nature and his intentions. Once he said that KGB man is always a KGB man, and the first thing he did as a president of Russia, he restored or brought back Soviet anthem. That's quite important symbolic act, because he demonstrated that it's a Freudian gesture, what he would do if given a chance. And later on, he repeated many times that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical disaster of the 20th century, and that's why one could expect from Vladimir Putin. Again, if he's given a chance, to act as Iron Fist ruler of Russia, desiring to rebuild Soviet empire.
Now, when you say he's trying to rebuild the Soviet empire, you're just talking about the republics that were part of the Soviet Union, or the satellite states like Poland and Romania, Hungary?
I think it's not necessarily geographical. It's more like, rebuilding the prestige, of great Russia. So I think even Putin, is realistic enough to understand that, simply rebuilding Soviet empire, just adding territories as it happened before, was not a plausible idea. But he also believed, and still believes, that the world must be divided into spheres of influence. That's kind of a 19th or first half 20th century mentality, that there are superpowers, there are other powers, and everything that happens in the world must be a result of the negotiation between these big players, and others should simply follow. And of course, the former Soviet Union and a part of the Soviet bloc in Eastern Europe, according to Putin, must be part of the Russian sphere of influence, as he many times indicated to his counterparts, both to George W. Bush and to Barack Obama.
You're talking about he has to be stopped, and we all know that the West is at a weak point right now. How can he be stopped?
Yeah, I think we should start with with the question why it matters and why he must be stopped now without any delays. Because whether we like it or not, this confrontation is unavoidable. Vladimir Putin cannot stop from challenging the free world and defying the United States. Because today it is his only foundation or the argument for staying in power in Russia. This is the core of Russian propaganda, to attack the free world, to attack the United States, and creating conflicts, creating chaos, challenging the existing world order, violating the international treaties and borders. That's Putin's tactic of survival. So what we know from history is that any delay in challenging a dangerous dictator means that tomorrow the price goes up, and day after tomorrow it could be even unbearable. Now,
in some respects, you're making a comparison to Hitler. Is Putin as dangerous as Hitler?
I hope we will not find out, what happens if Putin reaches Hitler's stage in 1940 or 1941. But we clearly could see Putin acting as Hitler did in 36, 37, 38, challenging international order, violating borders, annexing territories, and building his military machine. Vladimir Putin, despite all the difficulties that Russian economy has been facing for quite a while already, he has been steadily cutting social security expenses, healthcare, all, culture, education. And at the same time, he has been beefing up military, spending more money on security apparatus and, of course, on propaganda. This is war budget. And he has not been doing this just for fun. Naturally, his intentions, future intentions, are quite clear, and it's to continue challenging the free world and creating chaos to present himself to the Russian public as the only defender of national interest against endless enemies. Exactly same tactics as been used by Hitler in the 30s, and we are probably reaching a point where challenging Putin from inside would be almost impossible, because no industrialist, no general, no top bureaucrat in his mind will be willing to challenge a dictator who is so lucky, so powerful, almost invincible, and who is openly challenging the strongest leaders in the world.
Now, a lot of people here in the West, a lot of people in New York, they don't have an idea. What is freedom of speech like in Russia right now? What can the opposition do?
Look, it's an outdated question. You could have asked this question maybe 10 years ago, and then I could tell you quite a sad story about freedom of speech in Russia being practically annihilated. Right now, it's not about freedom of speech being annihilated. It's about people who tried to speak out being either thrown behind bars or even killed, as my close friend and ally, former Deputy Prime Minister Boris Nemtsov, who has been gunned down in front of Kremlin earlier this year.
We don't hear a lot in the West about how bad it is as far as freedom of speech is.
I think it's a bit too late now to talk about the freedom of speech. The entire media space in Russia is under strict Kremlin control. All TV channels, main radio channels, press, it's 24/7 propaganda, and it's somehow even worse than in the Soviet time. I had to leave Russia almost 3 years ago, and my mother is still there. She's 78. She was born under Stalin and raised during these very difficult times, and she saw everything, she heard everything. And her impression is that today the propaganda is even worse and more poisonous, because during communist times, at least Soviet propaganda tried to talk about some bright future. It was saying that, with all sacrifices today, we could reach, the point where everybody will be happy, the communist brotherhood, all this nonsense, but at least they tried to be pleasant and offering people some kind of happiness and success in the distant future. Putin's propaganda is kind of like a cult of death. It's about enemies, it's about war, it's about conflicts, confrontation, and Russia, like a fortress of good surrounded by evil, and we have to fight, and there's no exit sales strategy. It's all about us fighting and eventually dying.
How should the West respond right now, particularly the United States?
I'm always confused when I hear, from politicians and from political pundits, comments like, "Oh, either we fight, either it's a war, or it's or we can keep making concessions, delaying decisions. It's appeasement is the only alternative to war," which is not true, because between war and appeasement there is a huge territory called leadership. And so many tools in the hands of the free world, and especially in the hands of the United States, that were not available during the Cold War, when Soviet Union was very powerful, not only militarily, but also economically. While today's Russia accepts nukes, it's a fairly weak state politically, economically, militarily. It's just a pale shadow of the former Soviet Union. It doesn't have the same allies. It doesn't have the same powerful ideology that could reach millions around the world. It's all about personal rule of Vladimir Putin. It's money and power, and it doesn't have the same effect on people outside of the country. On the other side, the United States could use financial and economic tools, even without European allies. Even without Europeans, being aboard, America alone could impose tremendous damage to the Russian economy and to rise dramatically the cost of Putin's further aggression.
So what should the next president of the United States do?
It will not be an easy task because the president of the United States will have, first of all, to restore the credibility of his office. And it's not just, one-off move, because with credibility that, say, Ronald Reagan had, he could afford to make these credible threats without using much of military force. Actually, he did it much less than for his successors. If you don't have the same credibility, and if your credibility has been damaged because of the years of inaction and drawing red lines and then walking away, then everybody expects you, just to make just empty promises, and eventually you have no choice but to use force. I think the problem is that since 1992, American foreign policy looked very much like a pendulum swinging from one side to another. Bill Clinton, George W. Bush, now Barack Obama. Unlike in the Cold War, where foreign policy was an era of consensus, and there were some disagreements, but within a range between both political parties and their leaders. So next president will have to make sure that the word of the U.S. president, the word of the United States, will be taken seriously again, and we'll have to come up with a plan that could give comfort to American friends, to those who are seeking to liberate their countries from dictatorship, and will make clear that there's a vision for the future, and there will be new institutions, lasting institutions to be built, same way as Harry Truman administration built institutions like NATO, CIA, the change the Voice of America as an important tool to confront Soviet propaganda, and many others that secured the victory in the Cold War.
Okay, now the name of your book is Winter is Coming. Why should people read this book?
I believe that for anyone to understand what's happening now and to make some reliable prognosis for the future, the history must be read, and we have to learn from history, because the history is not linear. It goes in cycles in seasons, and the book is just basically giving you this forecast that we are now approaching a new cold season. You may call it a new Cold War. And understanding how the Cold War was won, how important it was to build a foreign policy, strategy for global confrontation with the Soviet Union and a communist system, based on the values, based on what made the free world so competitive and so successful. It's vital for identifying the right moves today and the right strategy for tomorrow.
Again, the name of the book is Winter is Coming. Now, some of the people in the audience may know you from some of your accomplishments in the past. Before you got involved in politics, what'd you do for a living?
Right now, I've been doing it for 10 years. I'm doing lectures, seminars for strategy, decision making, innovations, risk. Most of these lectures and seminars, and you can find more about them on Kaspaarov.com. I did these events for major corporations, for big business conferences, and for universities and other audiences. And it's based on my previous book, How Life Imitated Chess. The book where I try to apply my chess skills and my knowledge of the game and my experience to explain the nature of decision making.
Okay, and you had some success in the chess world, I assume.
Yes, I could say that I was successful in chess, and I believe that through the years of my chess career, I learned not only how to make good moves, but also to understand what was behind these good moves. So how you could improve the process of rigorous self-analysis to make sure that every time that you start a new game, you will be a better player.
The name of the book is Winter is Coming. What was the website again, Mr. Kasparov, that you'd want people check on?
No, if they want to know more about my activities, they can go to Kaspaarov.com. That's the simplest address. And they can read about my activities as the lecturer, as a speaker, and also as the former world chess champion who has been actively promoting chess for education through Kasparov Chess Foundation.
Those of us out here truly appreciate your efforts in freedom of speech around the world and freedom, of the peoples around the world, and don't think your efforts are not appreciated. There are a lot of us out here who admire you for what you've accomplished and what you're doing.
Thank you very much. And I think it's very important that Americans today and the citizens of the free world remember that half of the world is still living in unfree countries. And as 30, 40 years ago, we knew that people cared about freedom of others. I think the words that you said now are also very valuable, and hopefully my compatriots will hear them as well.
Do you have much of a compatriots in the United States that you deal with or talk with?
Not so many. So I would say yes. There are many compatriots, but very few of them are willing to take a stand.
Thank you for coming on Connor's Corner.